Hi, and welcome back to AP Psychology videos. This is the last slide of our motivation section of this unit. You can review it by going to the crash course that Hank Green put together. Some of you have already looked at it. We've looked at arousal theory, evolutionary theory, drive theory, and now we're going to start talking about emotion. So we're moving on to that. And when we look at emotion, I'll bet some of you are thinking, well, how complex can emotion be? It is complex. In fact, there are 4 parts. So let's look at the first part. The first part is physiological arousal. So when you think of emotion, imagine seeing a snake or a spider or something that you're afraid of. The first thing that happens is your body kicks into gear. All these stress hormones start going through your body. So you have a physiological arousal. You feel it. Your hands get cold, your stomach gets that feeling, and all the blood rushes to your shoulders, your legs, your buttocks, so you can either punch or you can run. But do we have a name for that emotion yet? No. Your body has done something physiologically. Your body has done something, but we don't have an emotion yet. And then there's the second part, cognitive interpretation. Boop, 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 boop. What is this? What is this that I'm feeling? Because sometimes stress can be, we don't know exactly what we're feeling. In fact, we were talking about that in advisory, where you name it. And so then at some point we have to think about it, and then we name it. And the advisory thing talked about, you can see stress as a threat or as a challenge. You're feeling the same way in your physiological body, but how you name it is totally different. So that's an interesting part of emotion, that we can't help it if we're afraid of a snake, but we can call it something different. And if we call it something different, that will change how we behave, how we express our emotions. So think about it. If you want to get rid of, let's say, your fear of flying. Let's say you are afraid of flying and you see an airplane and you just get this feeling of just stress through your body. But if you decide you're really trying to beat that, the feeling is going to be, I'm challenged. And you might get on that plane. You might feel the fear and do that anyway. So we're going to look at different ways that emotion is labeled in this unit. When we see these core concept boxes, it's basically, here's a big idea that we're going to be talking about. Emotions help us respond. If we see a snake in the grass, we run. That's a response. But there's also something we're going to be talking about, like our facial expressions convey our emotions. It's important that my body somehow and my face conveys them to you. We can communicate our emotions with each other, and it's really important. That's why a smile is important. It says we're non-threatening. That's why sometimes when somebody's down, it's important that somebody says, are you okay? We respond to events and we convey how we feel. I'm going to put all this here, and we can't talk about this yet. This is all Unit 3, and we haven't studied Unit 3 yet. So this is parts of the brain. This is your different nervous systems. These are the adrenaline, the hormones we're going to talk about. And this is the last part of our brain right here. So we're going to come back to this in Chapter 3, but we're not going to hit this yet because we're doing it a little out of order because we wanted to talk about stress. Okay. When we talk about a lie detector, it's called a polygraph, and we're talking about that here because what a polygraph does, poly means many, graph means write, and we have many different writings right here. I don't know if you can see it in there, but a polygraph has different recordings of things, many recordings, many drawings, and it records your pulse, blood pressure, galvanic skin response, which is also known as sweating. It measures different things. So the theory is when you lie, your body doesn't like it, and you have a physical response to lying. And for many people, that's true. If I ask you what you were doing, if I asked you if you turned something in or whatever and you didn't do it but you lie, for many of us, our physical response shows that we're lying. But all that measures, it doesn't measure if we're lying, it measures if we have that nervous feeling, if our blood pressure goes up, if our pulse goes up. So can you lie without feeling nervous? Mm-hmm. Can you feel nervous while you're telling the truth? Mm-hmm. Does a polygraph measure your physiological response to stress? Yes. Does it tell us whether you're lying? Not really. It's really weird because a polygraph is not admissible in a criminal trial. In other words, if we're putting you to death, if you are being tried for murder, we could not admit a polygraph because the law says they are not accurate enough. If it is a civil trial, meaning you're being sued, not that you would go to jail. Polygraphs are admissible in court. So does the law say that they're accurate? Sort of. Does it say that they're accurate enough to put a person in jail? No. So does the polygraph measure, oops, I'm going back, sorry. Does the polygraph measure whether we're lying? This video says yes. This video says no. You can watch both of them. They are in the PowerPoint, in the files on our teams. So if you want to watch those videos, feel free. And the guy who runs a polygraph on this one has a really great accent. So if you want to watch him, I'm terrible at impressions, but he's pretty funny. Okay. Now I'm going to talk about the first theory of emotion, and then I'm going to let Mr. Davis take the other two. This one is pronounced James Lange. I don't really have a good acronym for that, but I would think, or excuse me, not an acronym, but a good mnemonic device for this. I'm thinking of I'm thinking of James Longer or something like that, but I don't know. This is the oldest theory of emotion, and here was the theory that he said. William James, and this other guy named Lange, I don't remember his first name. He said, when we see a spider or a snake, the first thing that happens is the physiological response, and then the emotion follows. But he didn't say that we are allowed to think about it. And the last theory that we're going to look about adds the brain, the cognitive interpretation. But James Lange said, and this kind of makes sense, Mr. James, William James said, we feel it, and then we have a name for it. And that makes sense because your brain takes a long time to process. We see a snake and we don't have time. So your body feels it, the arousal occurs, and then the emotion occurs. You don't even, think about it, if you're running from a snake, you don't have the time to say, boy, I'm feeling afraid. You feel it and that's it. So imagine you know somebody, here's maybe a mnemonic, you know somebody named James. And you see James and you don't have time because he's going to punch you in the face. So James is going to punch you in the face. So the first thing that happens is you run. And then later you say, I was so scared. So the first thing you do is you run and then you're so scared. Mr. Davis is going to talk about the next two theories in the next video.